Imagine waking up one morning and finding that you cannot turn your head, not because of a stiff neck, not because you slept wrong, but because overnight, your body has begun building a second skeleton on top of the one you were born with, and it is fusing your neck solid, 1 degree at a time, forever. This is the daily reality for people living with Fibrodysplasia Ossificans Progressiva, or FOP. It is one of the rarest, cruelest, and least understood genetic diseases ever documented. Fewer than 1 in 2 million people have it. There are only a few hundred confirmed cases on the entire planet. And what it does to the human body is so strange, so biologically impossible sounding, that for centuries doctors didn't believe it was real. People with FOP are, in the cruelest sense imaginable, turning into living statues. While they are still alive, while they are still fully conscious. Here's how it works. Every human body has a repair system. When you damage a muscle, tear a ligament, or bruise soft tissue, your body sends in repair cells to fix the damage. In a healthy person, those repair cells rebuild soft tissue, muscle, tendon, connective tissue. But in a person with FOP, a single mutated gene gives the body the wrong instructions. Instead of rebuilding soft tissue, the repair cells build bone, solid, dense, permanent bone, directly inside muscles, tendons, and ligaments. Anywhere the body experiences damage, inflammation, or even minor trauma, a second skeleton begins to grow. And once it grows, it never goes away. There is no way to dissolve it. There is no way to surgically remove it without triggering even more bone growth in response to the surgical wound itself. This means that for someone with FOP, the most dangerous things in the world are not diseases or accidents in the traditional sense. The most dangerous things are the most ordinary parts of being human. A simple bump against a doorframe, a flu shot, a fall as a toddler, a bruise from playground roughhousing, even a common cold, because the inflammation from the immune system's own response can trigger new bone growth. The body's defense systems become its own worst enemy. The condition is almost always caused by spontaneous genetic mutation, meaning most people with FOP are not born to parents who carry the gene. It simply happens, a 1 in a billion copying error in a single gene called ACVR1, which controls bone growth signaling. This one gene, slightly miscoded, rewires how the entire body interprets injury. For the first few years of life, a child with FOP often appears completely normal, except for one telltale sign that doctors have learned to recognize immediately. Malformed, big toes. Short, bent inward, sometimes missing a joint entirely. It's such a subtle detail that for most of medical history, it was overlooked entirely, dismissed as a harmless birth defect. But for trained specialists today, it is often the first clue, sometimes the only clue, that a much larger transformation is coming. Then, usually between the ages of 2 and 5, the first flare-up happens. A swelling appears, often on the back, neck, or shoulders. Sudden, painful, and alarming. It looks like a tumor. For decades, doctors misdiagnosed these swellings as cancer and performed biopsies to remove them. But here is the horrifying twist. The biopsy itself, the very act of cutting into the swelling to investigate it, triggers explosive new bone growth at the surgical site. Doctors, trying to help, unknowingly accelerating the disease. Today, genetic testing can identify FOP without ever touching the swelling, but for generations, well-meaning surgery turned a slow-progressing disease into a rapidly accelerating one. The flare-ups don't follow a predictable schedule. They can be triggered by an injury. They can be triggered by a viral infection. Sometimes they appear to happen completely spontaneously, with no trigger at all. Each flare-up follows the same horrifying sequence. First, swelling and severe pain in the affected area, like a deep, burning ache. Then, over the course of weeks, the swelling hardens. Soft tissue that was once muscle slowly transforms, through an actual biological process called heterotopic ossification, into ribbons and sheets of new bone. This new bone connects to the existing skeleton, often bridging across joints. Once it bridges a joint, that joint is permanently fused, forever, in that position, for the rest of that person's life. The disease typically progresses from the top of the body downward, and from the central body outward to the limbs. The neck often fuses first, locking the head in place, unable to turn left or right, unable to look up or down. Then, the shoulders. Then the spine, curving and locking into a fixed posture. Then the hips, the elbows, the knees. By early adulthood, Many people with FOP have lost the ability to open their mouths more than a few millimeters because the jaw muscles themselves have ossified, making eating, speaking, and even routine dental care a serious medical challenge. By their 20s or 30s, most people with FOP have become almost completely immobile, not because their muscles have weakened, but because their muscles have been replaced, piece by piece, with an unwanted second skeleton bridging every joint in their body. Their original skeleton is still there, fully intact, hidden somewhere beneath this new architecture of bone that was never supposed to exist. And throughout this entire process, the swelling, the hardening, the locking of joints one by one, the person remains completely cognitively normal, fully aware, fully present, trapped slowly, joint by joint, inside a body that is sealing itself shut from the outside in. There is currently no cure for FOP, although recent breakthroughs have brought the first targeted treatments closer to reality than ever before. For most of medical history, the only advice doctors could offer was this: avoid all unnecessary trauma. No injections into muscle, no biopsies, no contact sports, no falls. Live as carefully and gently as humanly possible, because every single bump, scrape, or bruise carries the risk of becoming permanent. People with FOP describe their condition using a phrase that has become tragically iconic in the small community of patients and families who live with this disease. They call it a second skeleton that imprisons you within your own body, turning you to stone, bone by bone, joint by joint, breath by breath. And the cruelest detail of all, the mutation responsible for FOP affects a gene involved in something every single human embryo needs in order to develop properly in the womb. The same growth signaling pathway that builds your skeleton in the first place. The same pathway that tells your body where bones should and shouldn't form. In FOP, that pathway simply never learns to switch off. Your body, in other words, never stops building you.